overcoming adversity, doing it at all costs, making wins at all loss. Yeah, the world is all lost, yeah. Ain't no turning back, we headed straight for the stars, yeah. Oh yeah, we overcoming adversity, doing it at all costs, making wins at all loss. Yeah, the world is all lost, yeah. Ain't no turning back, we headed straight for the stars, yeah. Oh yeah.
Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast, where it's all about a transformational growth and a resilient mindset. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Today we have Deborah Charnes, who is an author of the book From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram. She finally listened to her heart and left the security of a paycheck and benefits to follow and complete all of her life dreams. She's been through her own fair shares of adversities, and today I just want to welcome to the show my good friend, Deborah Charnes.
It is wonderful to be here because I am actually a certified yoga therapist. And as a therapist, I recognize that most problems in people's lives, even if they are physical problems, have something to do with adversity and prior traumas that they've gone through. So I applaud you for all of your personal overcoming of obstacles, but also sharing with the world what people can do to help themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for being on here, being my guest today. I was looking through your book and looking through your website, and then looking about all of the phenomenal things that you've done, and then the story that you shared in regards to like your upbringing and your childhood to where you're at now was such a phenomenal story. So if you can, let's start right there and dive into it. Can you tell me about what is it that you're doing right now that led you to the level of success that you're at now?
Well, first of all, I want to say that in comparison to other people, and especially in comparison to some of the people that I feature in my book, who I consider my gurus, I really did have it easy. Of course, no one lives without challenges and no one lives without overcoming obstacles. But again, compared to others, I do feel, and I have a gratitude practice, and one of the chapters in my book is all about
Mhm.
gratitude. And I am thankful every single day that I wake up and I breathe, I walk, I'm healthy, and I am 65 years old. And um, yes, in terms of other challenges that I have overcome, I think that they have been a cakewalk compared to what some people do. But I also believe that what is fundamental is to have that positive mindset. Because too often people will have the victim mindset.
Mhm.
Why me? Why me? And I even remember, I've tried to focus on a healthy lifestyle my entire life because I grew up with different um, different chronic physical issues, and I grew up in a diabetic household. So I was a health food nut, from the time I was in high school or even before. And yet, even though I did everything to be my healthiest, I remember about 10, 12 years ago, I went to the doctor. And by the way, that one doctor he has an endorsement on my book. And when I went to that doctor, and finally, my blood sugar was not normal, even though I had been doing everything correctly. And when I complained to him about, I work out several hours a day, I eat like nothing compared to what most people eat. I'd already lost 30, 40 pounds.
Wow.
Like, I'm like, I look at other people and they eat crap and their blood sugar is fine. And this doctor, the words of wisdom that he told me is never compare yourself to anyone else.
Right.
And that was a long time ago. And those words stuck with me.
Wow. So if you can take us back to your upbringing, Where did you grow up, and what was that like for you, being that you grew up in a diabetic household?
Well, I grew up in the Chicago area,
Hmm.
and I grew up, you know, I don't, I never thought that I had stress, right? I was a kid. I didn't think that I had stress, but I was always aware of crime. And so I was always a little worried about things like that. But when I was an adolescent, I had severe back pains and I also had severe stomach cramping. And the back pains, I fortunately went to a specialist, and the doctor, I don't know if it was the growing in terms of that growth spurt that all of a sudden, it hit me.
Hmm.
But he did say that my back pains were caused by my body in terms of the posture and the poor muscles. So I recognized, or he let me know, that I could help it by doing exercises to build the core and also by doing exercises to flatten out my back because I had an excessive curvature of the spine.
Hmm.
So now, as a certified yoga therapist, I know all about that. And it's like, of course, it's like basics. But I was a kid, I didn't know. So I began physical exercises that are part of yoga very early in my life because of my back. I couldn't even sit up or stand without having back pain. And of course, now I don't really have any back pain. But the other issue that I had when I was just an adolescent was the digestive disorders. And again, I went to a specialist, and the the diagnosis, yes, I do have a physical issue that I will have every day for the rest of my life. But what is the cause of it? Stress.
Mm.
And again, as a kid, you don't necessarily think that you're going through stress. And even today, because I have been a yogi most of my life, and my sister calls me Miss Namaste because she's more high strung, and I used to do work that was in crisis management and crisis relations, and I'm used to all that, and I don't feel the stress, but my body does.
Mm.
Even though I may seem to be so even keeled and so even tempered, but my body will respond. So I began meditation and breath work to help for that also when I was just a teen. And the last time that I had a severe attack was the day of my father's funeral, which was probably now about 15 years ago.
Wow. So, how did you deal with that once you found out about your dad? Did that bring you to any like a stressful mindset or anything like that? Or what was that time period for when you was going through that?
Well, I consider myself to be like my father. My father was a PE teacher. He was a former military, guy too. He flew bomber planes, and he was, as macho as they come. He never complained about anything. And he was, for the most part, pretty even tempered. And I
Mhm.
consider myself like him. I can take all the punches. Nobody knows what's going on in my personal life, no matter how bad it may be. To the outside world, everything is hunky dory, right?
Right, right.
But my body will respond, and my body will feel the pain. And like my father, I do not outwardly grieve. Again, I think of this also very much as kind of like a macho trait. You
Right,
know,
right.
Big men don't cry. Well, I kind of felt big women don't cry. And I always wanted to be that superwoman. And
Mhm.
I believe that I tried to be that superwoman to protect myself. But if we don't release our emotions, something has got to give. And
Right.
in the case of me and many, many other people, the body will respond.
Wow. So knowing that you had a chronic back pain and a digestive order disorder, what caused you and led you to step out of the business that you were in or the company that you was working for and step into this holistic lifestyle?
Okay, that's a that's a very the answer to that is going to be a little bit long. For personal reasons, I had to always be the responsible. I've always been a responsible adult. I still am. But I always felt the burden of everything on my shoulders.
Mhm,
And I had to continue doing whatever I needed to do for that steady paycheck
mhm,
and also for health insurance. And I'm not
mhm.
saying I never needed it for anything big, but I always felt that I needed the health insurance for my family. And that
Right.
was something I was always concerned about, just knowing the costs of healthcare in the United States. So I had a very stressful job. I was working 7 days a week. I was working 80 hours a week. I was traveling all over the United States and also to Latin America for my job. And people would think, oh, that's so nice. You get to travel. No, you get to be rushing to get on a plane and rushing to get to an appointment and then rushing to get back. And I've always had a very restrictive diet. So it was common for me to skip meals or to eat popcorn at the airport. And that was about it.
Mhm.
Um, my job was extremely stressful, and I always knew that if I didn't outperform, I wouldn't have a job.
Mm.
And because I was so um, paranoid about losing that sense of security from the income, I stayed with my job forever. And it was finally once my daughter graduated college and once she had a job where it was part time, but she was getting medical insurance. And so and she was living outside of the house. So once that happened, I felt, what do I need? I don't really need that much. I can survive on rice and beans. And I, so that was when I made the decision to leave the job.
Wow. So, what was that transition like for you? Was it just a simple, easy transition, or did you have to like wean yourself off of it, or did you say, "Let me like save up enough money" or something like that, or you just said, "Cold turkey, I'm done, I resign," or or what?
It required a lot of thinking about it. I am a very deliberate type of person.
Hmm.
I created checklists. I created budget on what the bare minimum was that I
Hmm.
needed to survive to
Hmm.
pay. And I saw that almost all of the money I was earning was going to different types of insurance.
Wow.
Aside from healthcare, for my home, for my business, I also had to have insurance and auto insurance. It just seemed like insurance took the biggest chunk of my income. But I figured out what the minimum was. It wasn't like I saved money to be able to leave. However, while I was working in the corporate world, I did as much as possible to pay off my mortgage. And so I paid off my mortgage early, very early. And the reason why was because I was always afraid of being without a job
Right.
and being homeless. I mean, that has it was always a major concern.
Wow. So when you transition from this corporate job that you were doing, what is it that you said I was going to do next? Did you already made up your mind on what you was going to do next? Did you said I'm going to go into entrepreneurship? Did you say I'm going to get into be an author? What did you make up your mind to decide I was going to do?
Okay. Well, first of all, going back a little bit, before when I was still working 80 hours a week, I took one of my vacations and I went to Mexico and I completed my yoga teacher training. And I did not do that with the anticipation of teaching yoga. I did that for self-care to, it was right around the time that I was diagnosed pre-diabetic. And I knew that I needed to do, again, I had always lived such a healthy life. And so it was like, I need to step up what I'm doing. So that was why I took my vacation and I went to Mexico. I completed my yoga teacher training. When I came back to the United States, there was no way that I could teach because I didn't have any free time and my schedule was always up in the air because I had to be available to fly anywhere, anytime.
Hmm.
And I always had events. So I never was really teaching at first. And then again, I did some soul searching. And when I looked at the money, at what I really needed to survive, then I decided, okay, I am going to leave the corporate world. I'm going to take my knowledge and expertise from the corporate world, and I'm going to continue doing marketing communications, but only taking clients that I felt were going to contribute to positive transformation in our community.
Hmm.
I'm not going to name my former clients, but I will say that I never purchased any of their products for the most part because I didn't think that they were either healthy for us or healthy for the environment.
Hmm.
And when I opened up my own consultancy, I took on mostly nonprofit clients. Of course, I did not charge the nonprofit clients very much, but I did things that I believed in and that I felt were going to help to better our community. And then with me in control of my time, I started to teach yoga and I did more and more and more. And then I studied for an extra 3 years and became a certified yoga therapist.
So let's get into this space. Can you tell us a little bit about what is it like for to do yoga, meditation, breath work, and how does that contribute to like someone's healing process?
I think it's essential from my standpoint. Again, I came into all of that as an adolescent to heal both my back pain, chronic back pain, and my digestive disorders. In the book that I've written, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, what I do is I talk, I focus on life lessons from a dozen of my gurus on 4 continents. And one of the chapters is all about yoga for chronic pain, primarily back pain. Another chapter is about yoga and the brain, and it's in particular about yoga for PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And the people that I interviewed for those 2 chapters, who I consider my mentors, are, in my point of view, they are the highest ranking researchers, one on yoga and the brain, and 2 on yoga for the back and for the body. In my book, every chapter incorporates my personal experiences with how whatever I'm recommending or whatever my mentors are recommending, but it also highlights third-party research. I'm the kind of person, I'm not going to say I'm skeptical, but I question everything.
Hmm.
I want to know. And if somebody says, oh, yoga is good for the back, well, yes, that's kind of obvious to me. But I want to know specifically what research findings have proven. And so that's why every chapter of mine incorporates research findings along with personal testimony and, of course, the words of wisdom from my teachers. Bottom line, when we talk about yoga, we really should not talk about yoga as the physical. Unfortunately, in the Western world, people look at yoga as being the physical component, or they look at it as a workout. As a yoga therapist, I often tell people the emphasis is on therapy, not yoga, because
Okay.
people think of yoga as the physical. And I oftentimes have clients where we do not do any physical activity.
Mm.
I'm not a psychotherapist, but I do other things that I have been trained in and that I have learned that contribute to healing in many different ways. And that's why my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, Wisdom for the Mind, Body, and Spirit, is really all about these therapeutic tools. And most of them are not about the physical components of yoga. Yoga for me has so many possibilities. Traditionally, we talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, and breath work and meditation are part of that. But there are many others, and some of the other limbs that I talk about is devotion, chanting, and even selfless service. And those to me are all integral parts of yoga and extremely therapeutic.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Now I want to dive into this book. So, for someone that's going to pick up this book, can you share with us some key takeaways that they'll walk away from this book? What are some lessons in there? What are some interesting stories that's inside of this book? That you
Sure. Well, first of all, in the United States, we talk about the SAD, SAD diet, and that SAD stands for Standard American Diet.
right?
It does contribute to sad statistics. And I just want to I want to mention that most of us in this country are overweight, overwhelmed, unhappy, and or void of spiritual fulfillment. And hey, I would say that I could check every one of those in the past. More than 2 in 5 adults in the United States experience symptoms of an anxiety or depressive disorder in any given week. 70% of Americans are overweight. Stress affects 8 out of 10 Americans each week. And only 14% of Americans say they are very happy. So those are a lot of sad statistics.
Correct.
On the flip side, we can turn those things around. We really have the power to be our healthiest and happiest. I, of course, am not saying that you can overturn cancer with some of what I have in my book, although I have met many people who have overcome uncurable cancer
Hmm.
through non-traditional means. But my book does not talk about that. My book is about being your healthiest and happiest with simple, affordable, free activities that you can do in just 10 minutes a day or less. And the only thing that I would say is not free is a caveat. You should always go to your doctor or your specialist first to make sure that everything is appropriate for you. But most of the things in my book are really appropriate for everyone. And I'm going to give you an example of one person's incredible story and how he overcame insurmountable adversity. I was living in South America, and there was a man who his business was above my business. He would come to my business. I had a little cafe. He would come to my cafe every day for coffee and dessert. He was a normal businessman, right?
Mhm.
Many years later, I was living in Miami. I turned on the news, and I'm a Spanish speaker, so I turned on the Spanish language, probably Univision News. And I see that this man is running for office to be vice president of the country. Well, I shouldn't say I see this man. I heard the name of this man. And it's an unusual name. It's not like Jose Lopez, right? It
Right.
was a very unusual name. And I'm like, can this be? And the reason why I was doubting was because he was a paraplegic. What had happened since I returned back to the United States is he was the victim of an assault. One of the assailants pulled the trigger and a bullet lodged in his spinal cord.
Oh, wow.
So he was, from that day forward, forever paralyzed from the waist down. He had an insurmountable amount of pain. The doctors gave him all different kinds of painkillers. They tried different interventions. He was bedridden for almost 4 years. Needless to say, he was very depressed. And again, his life just changed from one day to the next. What he ended up finding as his best medicine was, do you want to take a stab? Or we want to take a guess at what was the best medicine? You're doing it right now. It was laughter.
Laughter. Are
So
you
he
serious?
found, yes. So he found that laughter was the best medicine. He ended up becoming vice president, and then he was appointed by Ban Ki-moon to have an international post based out of Geneva. And then he came back to South America and was elected president. And he
Oh
was
my
the first,
God.
and he was the first president of Latin America in a Latin American nation to be wheelchair bound.
Wow.
And he always was talking about the power of laughter.
Mm.
Now, I mentioned before that you should always get your doctor's approval before anything, and it seems as if everyone can benefit from laughter, right? However, a caveat, I am a certified laughter yoga coach. And there are a few times when people should not practice laughter yoga. So always get, a doctor's green light before you do anything.
Right.
But for the most part, laughter is always good.
Wow. So, how long did it take you to write this book? Since you have so many contributors to it.
I've been a writer most of my life. My work career for the corporate world, I was always a writer, but I always wrote short, 500 words, 1,000 words. The process that I found that I did for my book that helped was that initial outline stage. And one of the chapters in my book is actually about a digital disconnect or a secular Sabbath. And my Ayurvedic doctor, that's the lifestyle medicine from life science from India, he had recognized that even though, again, I was this very calm, peaceful yoga teacher, he recognized that I needed more to de-stress myself.
Mm.
He was the one that suggested that once a week, I disconnect from all my devices and that I don't drive a car and I won't even get in a bus or in a train. So I basically take the concept of Sabbath or Shabbat, and once a week, I honor that. I do use electricity. I do turn on, my lights, but it's a digital disconnect.
Mhm.
And my Ayurvedic doctor suggested that in addition to doing that once a week, he wanted me to periodically do it for 3 days at a time. The first time that I did it for the 3 days at a time, all the ideas of my book came into my head, and I created the entire outline, and I even created the draft of my marketing plan during that 3-day disconnect. That's why I'm a firm believer that we need to disconnect periodically. We need to reboot our bodies and our souls, because too often we're on autopilot and we are constantly stretched, we're running around,
Right.
and we just need to say no.
Yeah, one of my mentors always tell me, practice the power of saying no. That's with people, and you're so right about saying that. I think about my son was talking to me the other day, and we were talking about cell phones and social media and things like that. And then I told him that I have not been on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that for the past week. And I was talking to him about some of the same things too, and how it can become so much of a distraction, and it takes away from like your valuable time, one of the most important things on this earth. So I 100% agree with you that we do need to take the time to disconnect and just focus on ourselves and just heal from that.
Right. And one of the beauties too, when we disconnect, is again, we connect more with ourselves, but also with nature or with loved ones. And again, I'm old school. Of course, I'm on all social media, but I grew up back in the day when kids played outside. And when I grew up, we only had 4 stations on an old black and white television set, and the choices were not the greatest. So, it was a lot more enjoyable to play outside. And of course, I believe that it is so much healthier to
Yeah,
be outside.
we need to get some sunlight, man. You're so right. So I'm fasting right now. I'm on my weight loss journey, so I'm fasting right now, and it's it's been so beneficial when you what you're saying is so key. So when you disconnect, but you reconnect with yourself, and having that morning of gratitude and meditation and breath work is so it's like revitalizing for me. And I realize as I'm fasting, like I'm learning so much more about myself mentally that I never really paid attention to. And what I've been learning is like a lot of like toxicity is just like leaving your body that was already there.
I love that you mentioned that, because I have actually, because of my digestive disorders, that again, I live with them, they don't bother me at all. But one of the specialty focus areas that I do as a yoga therapist is digestive disorders, and also weight management
Hmm.
and blood sugar management. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, they are all connected. And one of the things that I encourage people to do is fasting.
Hmm.
And throughout time, across the world, every culture, every religion has their own form of fasting.
Yes.
And I truly believe that different forms of fasting are very healthy for you. And in my book, one of my book's chapters is based on my Ayurvedic teacher in India. And his book is all about your digestive fire. And what he talks about is that the health of your digestive fire affects your overall physical and mental health. And this is
Absolutely.
from an Ayurvedic perspective, and he encourages periodic fasting. So again, that is all from an Ayurvedic perspective. But then I also quote someone who also wrote an endorsement for my book, who is a leading gastroenterologist and professor of medicine in California. And he talks also about the importance of the gut microbiome,
Hmm.
which is a new buzzword. But that gut microbiome basically also, science has shown that it affects almost everything, your emotional well-being and physical, even things such as Parkinson's disease, I believe, are affected by that gut microbiome. So I thought it was fascinating that the ancient Ayurvedic wisdom is now substantiated by the latest that we know about the gut microbiome. And again, fasting from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's also considered a reset. So
Absolutely.
just as the digital divide or the digital disconnect rather is a reboot, when you fast, you are also rebooting your digestive tract. And if you think about how people lived, in the caveman era, they didn't have 3 meals a day, right? It was they ate when they had food.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of things are systematically put in place, and now we're thinking that we have to eat breakfast, we have to eat lunch, we have to eat dinner, we have to have dessert. So that's some of the things that lead to some misconception when it comes to our diet, and I fell a victim to that. I was thinking about it once I got ready to get on this fasting journey, and I was born in Jamaica, and we grew up eating potatoes, yams, rice and peas, um, pretty much all natural products from the earth. We didn't have McDonald's, we didn't have KFC, we didn't have Burger King, we didn't have Pizza Hut, we didn't have any of those things. So I was a fairly healthy kid growing up as a kid. And then once I came to America, I got introduced to fast food and all these other things, your school lunches and all these other types of food. And yeah, it was it was set up where, like, like, your parents are on the go 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 go, so they're giving you whatever is free, whatever is fast, whatever you could pop in the microwave, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people lose their ways when it comes to what's introduced to us as we grow up.
Absolutely. It's the SAD, Standard American Diet, which is very sad. And one of the other things that I talk about in my book also is that in prior generations, and again, I've lived outside of the United States, and so I'm very used to seeing how people eat natural foods. And even when it comes to, I personally am vegan, but when I work with my clients, I don't tell them to be vegan, but what I will tell them is to find healthy sourcing,
Hmm.
because most of the animal products that you buy in a supermarket are extremely unhealthy, whereas in other countries, and as I'm sure you saw when you were a kid, the chickens lay the eggs, and you can, people have their own milk from their own cows, and it's just a completely different lifestyle where you grow a lot of your own food. I've Even more recently, I've spent a lot of time in Central America, and the places where I go in Central America, for the most part, everything is grown organically.
Hmm.
And one of the things, for example, in the United States that I avoid eating is corn, because it's almost all genetically modified here. And I also do not eat any wheat, or almost, I avoid almost all grains in the United States. Last year, I spent several months working in Italy, and I ate a lot of their grains, which I understand are the ancient grains, and I understand that they were all organic and are all a much better quality than, the traditional foods that we have in the United States. And of course, the factory farming, it's inhumane and it's not healthy for what you're consuming.
Right. Right. Wow. Wow. So for someone that's hearing this for the first time and understanding what you're doing, and they may have like a skepticism thought or an idea around holistic living, yoga, breath
Mhm.
work, and they're not privy to what's going on in that space. Like you said your sister said called you yogi.
Namaste.
And this namaste, right? So like that there's some people that may think that this stuff is weird. What are you guys doing? What do you have to say to people that may think that, if you could bring some normalcy to that?
Some of the things that I introduce in my book are the most natural, and they are going back to what you do as a child, such as laughing.
Hmm.
What I mention in my book is that laughter is so natural. Babies laugh. But as we get older, we are told, oh, you have to be serious, or what are you laughing about? In laughter yoga, I encourage people to be childlike, and we play, we sing, and we dance, and we pantomime, and of course we laugh. It's playtime. And another one of the concepts that I talk about in my book is singing. Again, every child wants to hear a song. The mother singing to the baby is one of the most natural things and one of the most loved things. My mother always said she couldn't carry a tune. Loved it when she would sing to me. She would sing to me every night, and I loved it. I didn't care if she could sing a tune. But again, unfortunately, as we get older, we're looking around and we're like, oh, that person sings so well. It's the comparison again.
Comparison. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't sing like Mariah Carey, so maybe I shouldn't be singing. No, that's not true. Everyone should sing. It is so enjoyable and it is the most natural thing. I would love to read a portion of my book that talks about singing, and if I can find it, but it talks about me as a child and how music was so important to me.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Sunday mornings, while everyone else at my house was still asleep, I would head down to the family room. Perched on top of a red and white checkered tablecloth was our only television. It was a black and white set with a rabbit ear antennae and a dial to select between the only 5 channels. I said 4 before, but that fifth one was PBS. Of course, these were the days before cable or remote control. During church time, the Queen of Gospel, Mahalia Jackson, sang a few feet away from me through that bulky console. Her voice and inner fire were captivating. The power and devotion in her songs of praise were nothing like the squeaking band or dishwatery chorus classes at my predominantly white elementary school. Even better than listening to Mahalia on the tube was singing with my older sister in our living room to an invisible audience on low green tile carpeted floor. We harmonized to the sound of music and Mary Poppins. At those moments, I was in heaven. In 1970, my sister bought her first LP. For those who don't know, that stands for long play, back when music was on a disc, a big disc. The Fifth Dimension's greatest hits, singing along to Stoned Soul Picnic, Wedding Bell Blues, and Let the Sunshine In was a rush. The songs reverberated. I experienced nada yoga without knowing what hit me.
Mm,
Nada yoga. Nada is a Sanskrit word. It's not the Spanish word meaning nothing. It's the Sanskrit word meaning sound. So that's
mm,
another example of what I feature in my book that is free. It is available and accessible and enjoyable to all. And it truly is part of yoga, which most people do not recognize as being a part of yoga.
wow. There's so much power in the voice. There's so much power in words. And you can see how that led to an inspiration and the birth in regards to what you're trying to, what you just said, some of these things that from our childhood we take for granted, but some things are so basic that could lead to so much healing and so much beneficial benefits that we do have with some of the things that we're doing. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. If I can add, I before the show, I told you that I spent 3 nights in a row going out, and I normally never go out.
Right,
I
right.
wasn't there. What I did, there was a musician, a devotional musician from Mauritius who lives in Switzerland, and he travels all around the world. And Memorial Day weekend, I saw him and others at 3.5 day weekend retreat filled with devotional music. And then when that retreat was over, he came to 2 other cities in Texas. And so I went to both of them, and there were 3 different events. And the type of devotional singing that he does is call and response. It's called kirtan. And again, it's very closely tied to yoga. And in kirtan, we say that the music comes from your heart. You let go of listening to your voice. You don't worry about how you sound if
Mm,
you can carry a tune, and you belt it out in unison. And we did that 3 nights in a row. And the last night we were on a boat. It wasn't sailing, but a motorboat. And there were 100 of us on a boat
uh-huh.
in Austin. And we were just singing like crazy. And it is so, it is my favorite form of yoga. And to me, it is, it's, I just cannot describe what it does. But again, if you go to any child and ask them, "Oh, do you want to sing?" It's, of course they do, because it feels good.
Mm. What were the moment, or what was that moment in your life, that pivotal moment in your life that let you knew that you're on the right path doing what you're doing now today?
Well, I would like to think that that right path is never a straight line. It always has zigzags and ups and downs. And I truly, again, I try to look at everything being with the glass half full. I believe that every adversity, every challenge, every roadblock teaches you something. And now that I have my book, I would say what I'm so thankful for is when I'm doing the marketing of my book, I learned how to do marketing from the best, in the United States. I might not have enjoyed it as much as I enjoy writing,
Right.
but I learned so much. And everything that I look at in life, I look at as being something to learn from. And again, including any mistakes along the road.
Mhm.
And I have no idea what the future will be for me, because again, I will welcome any twists and turns and keep on going.
Wow. So how do you maintain balance and self-care doing what you're doing now?
So what I tell my students and my clients all the time, and I need to listen to it myself right now because my book, it just launched. So there's a lot of activity and I'm going to be on the road to promote it a lot.
Right.
What I tell people all the time is when you feel most stressed out and when you feel you have the least amount of time for self-care,
Hmm.
that's when you need self-care. One of the other workshops that I lead, and I'm actually leading it in both Washington, D.C. and Texas this month, is called First Love Yourself.
Right.
And in the First Love Yourself workshop, it is a lot about self-care and
Right.
prioritizing self-care. And again, if I don't sleep much, I can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start working. It is so important, though, that if I do, I have to take that time off for myself to do, whether it be walking outside because I live in a tranquil area,
Hmm.
whether it be, I will always do my breath work and I will always do my body work every day. Or if it's chanting, so whether, for example, the last 3 nights in a row, maybe I woke up really early and maybe I didn't go to bed until late because I was working, but I took time out to chant in unison. And one of the things I do want to mention about chanting and singing is just as we all maybe feel good when we sing,
Right.
research has proven that when you sing with other people, such as at if you're at church or with friends, the results are much greater.
I, I
And
do
so
find I do find like when I'm at church, it's completely different opposed to when I'm singing in the car by myself or singing in the bathroom or something like that.
exactly. It really does make a difference, in particular on the heart rate variability, and
Hmm.
heart rate variability even affects your cardiovascular health. So there are many reasons why singing together, and the same thing with laughing. If I laugh by myself, I might kind of feel like a fool. But if you go to a comedy club, it's natural. Or if you go to laughter yoga, and one of the things about laughter yoga that I want to mention is that we simulate the laughter. So we are not laughing at jokes. It is not instinctual laughter, it's simulated. And what research has actually found is that simulated laughter even has a greater response on your body than instinctual laughter.
Oh, really?
So that was really interesting. Yeah. And
So, go ahead.
speaking of laughter, which again is so natural and it's also contagious, I want to talk about another component in my book that's all about smiling and gratitude. And smiling is also contagious. It's called social mimicry. If you see somebody sneeze or cry, you will probably do the same thing. Well, the same thing with a laugh or with a smile. And my mentor for that chapter is a woman who overcame so much adversity, and I consider her my shiro. She was from Texas and she went to California to train and be a professional boxer.
Hmm.
She was top ranked at one time and she got hit too many times, suffered traumatic brain injury, and she also was diagnosed with the exact same thing that Muhammad Ali was diagnosed with, which is dementia pugilistica. It is permanent cognitive impairment. In addition to her traumatic brain injuries, she was the victim of several crimes in the Los Angeles area, assault, and with all that, she suffered from PTSD.
Mhm.
And then, of course, with the injuries, she had severe chronic pain.
Right.
So she basically had everything was piled on top of her. And when you have all that, what else comes? Depression and suicidal thoughts.
Correct.
She also skyrocketed to 400 pounds, from 150 to 400 pounds. And fortunately, she of course gave up her life as a prize boxer, and boxing was her passion, right? So
Right.
she loved the life of a boxer. She loved the community. She had to give it up. So she came back to Texas. She checked herself into a brain injury center. And she was there for, I don't remember how many months. And now she is one of the most positive people I know. She is a Tai Chi teacher. She radiates positivity. Her slogans or her mantras are one of them is all is well. And she just has a wonderful positive mindset. And again, I just love everything she has to teach us, not, beyond Tai Chi, to teach us about life.
Wow. That's such an amazing story. Wow. How's your friend? Um, how's your friend dealing with, like, if you know, like the PTSD and all the trauma that she encountered?
She has not said anything about it um, for a long time. I have not asked, for example, if she has nightmares. I don't know if she has problems sleeping. I know she has a dog, and I know pet therapy can be very
Absolutely.
beneficial.
Yep.
Um, so I'm not really sure in terms of how things are in terms of responding to any triggers,
Hmm.
but she seems to me like the way that I see her, I can never imagine that she even had PTSD or that she had any. Um, but I'm not really sure about sleep in particular or those recurrent themes.
Got it. So what happened about your journey of leaving the familiar to now embracing this new lifestyle, or this lifestyle that you've been living now for a while?
Well, that's why I say I think I'm so lucky, and I feel very blessed with everything that I have experienced and every person who has come into my life, such as my 12 gurus that are featured in my book. But one of the things that I wish I had done a lot earlier is leave the comfort of the paycheck and steady job and the security. I say that, but again, I would not necessarily recommend it to others unless they felt that they had something else um, as other sources of income. But in my travels around the world, I'm always running across, especially young people who have a very um, like a very different mindset. The backpackers where they don't really have money, but they're not concerned and their expenses are low. And I very much wish that I had been like that. And I've always been a traveler, but I always did things on the cheap and I was always working. Even when I was in college, I would go to Mexico all the time for short weekends, but I would come back and sell whatever I had bought in Mexico to make money for my trips. So I would always find a way to make money. But speaking of that concept of those young people that, are not concerned about the responsibilities, I wanted to mention another person in my book who has been a guru of mine for many years. I have heard him speak all over the world. He's originally a guy from Chicago, like me. He's a little bit older, and the first summer of his college education, like many kids, he wanted to go backpacking in Europe. He didn't have any money. One of his friends said, "Hey, don't worry about it. I'll foot the bill." So 3 of them went from Chicago to Europe, and the one guy was taking care of the expenses. And of course, they did everything on the cheap. Well, one of the first days that they get to Europe, the guy with the money, he was pickpocketed. So he lost all his cash and his credit cards.
Oh
And
my God. Oh
so,
my God.
so the guy with the money and with the security went home. The 2 guys who didn't have money and didn't have security, they said, "We're going to stay." They backpacked everywhere. They went to like hippie festivals where they could get free food and where they could sleep wherever for free.
Mhm.
They hitchhiked everywhere. They get to Crete, and they both are meditating on a mountaintop in Crete.
Mm.
And when they're done with their meditation, they both come down and are like, they can't wait to talk to each other because they've both found the light. They both have been enlightened and they know what the answer is to life. And again, they're just 19 years old, right? So the one says, "I found the answer. I have to go to Israel." And the man who is my guru said, "I found the answer. I have to go to India." And so they split up. And my guru, it took him, I don't know how long, to hitchhike through war-torn countries to get to India.
Wow.
And the story when he gets to the border is incredible because they won't let him in because he's like a ragless or dressed in rags, and he only has, let's just say, 45 cents in 4 currencies. And he finally makes it across. And he pretty much has been living in India ever since. And he now has many philanthropic institutions, including one that serves hundreds of thousands of poor school children every year. And I have been there and I have served the children their lunches. And he has free hospitals, free dental and eye clinics that he has set up in the country. It's just amazing what he has done. And he still has no money. He has had no bank account for about 40 or 50 years. And in fact, the title of that chapter is "Happiness is Not Within a Bank Account."
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so you just said something that made me spark up a question that I don't think I asked you when we started, but I would like to know the origin of yoga, meditation, and breath work. Please take me down that path.
I thank you so much for that question because most people do not know about the origin of yoga, and they may be very surprised to find out. The word yoga means union, and traditionally we associate it with being union of body, mind, and spirit. It can also mean union with yourself and the divine or a higher source. It can also be yourself with the planet. But in the ancient sacred texts, the word yoga there were 3 words that were associated with the word yoga. Stillness, comfort in your seat. What that means is much more if you think of the traditional image of a yogi in a cave who sits for months at a time. And two of the people in my book did just that. They sat, in caves and meditated for months at a time. But the modern Western image of yoga, again, is very fast moving and energetic, dynamic. But in reality, the true yoga, according to those three words, are comfort and stillness in your seat. And to make it more easy for people to understand, I look at it as mindfulness. And mindfulness is a buzzword now.
Right.
Meditation can be a little offsetting to people. And that's why one of the chapters in my book is also about meditation and mindfulness. And what I say all the time is you don't have to be sitting with your eyes closed, in a lotus position for 3 hours. That's fine if you want to do that, but you can bring mindfulness into everything you do, including when you eat your food. Mindful eating is so important. Mindfulness of every word you speak. Make it something that is positive, something that is contributing and uplifting to others. Mindfulness of just, I look out my window and I feel so blessed to see every tree out my window. There are so many different ways that we can be mindful, and they are very easy to do. Sometimes it's just closing your eyes and just turning everything off. And then other forms of mindfulness that I love is I do a lot of walking meditation.
Mhm.
And Thich Nhat Hanh has written an incredible book. It's about this thin. It's about this big. It's a teeny, teeny, tiny book. And it's called How to Walk. So most people think, oh yeah, I've been knowing how to walk since I was a year old. But he teaches you how to walk mindfully.
Mhm.
It's a gem of a book.
So, for our listeners that's listening right now, if they wanted to incorporate mindfulness and apply some of the techniques that you teach in your business, what are some things that you could share with them that they could apply to their day-to-day lives?
Well, one of the things that I did in particular in my book, because as a yoga therapist, I was trained to meet people where they are.
Mhm.
Meaning that, for example, if I'm vegan, that doesn't mean that you're going to be vegan. It means that, but if I think that it might behoove you and that you are going to be open to eliminating soft drinks, then maybe that's what I will work with you on. And that is why my book has a 40-day tracker that you can download for free online. And you can pick and choose what you want to work with and what is right for you at the moment. And then maybe 40 days later, maybe you pick something else to work on. And I also have on my YouTube station, I have a lot of different tutorials. Again, I think I don't remember if I did one on how to walk, but I definitely have written blogs on my website based on Thich Nhat Hanh's book, How to Walk.
Mhm.
Because again, I think everyone can relearn how to walk in a mindful way. And again, just very simple, beautiful techniques that are appropriate for everyone.
For someone that's facing an adversity or an obstacle in their life right now, can you share like what role does self-compassion and self-acceptance play in their healing process with overcoming whatever adversity that they're facing right now?
Well, I think it's crucial. And again, I have read many different studies that have proven how a positive mindset does help you to heal. Likewise, so we all know about the placebo effect.
Yes.
There's also what's called the nocebo effect. And it's basically the opposite. So if you think that something is going to be bad, it will be bad. If
Right.
you think you're taking poison, even if it's not poison, even if you're drinking plain old water, but if someone tells you it has poison in it, chances are you will have a stomach ache and maybe you will throw up.
Right.
So there's both the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. That means that we absolutely know that attitude affects our outcome.
True.
And again, I'm not saying that this placebo is going to cure cancer. But what I can say for a fact is that different things, such as laughter yoga, I enjoy incorporating laughter yoga with cancer patients because it does at least uplift them and it makes them feel better. Some of the pain will go away for a little bit. And any little bit that you can do to help yourself along the way is, you have to look at, as Thich Nhat Hanh says in his book, How to Walk, one step at a time.
Right.
It's really all that matters, one step at a time.
Thank you. So, what is your ultimate goal and vision with sharing your book, your story, and with your teachings?
Yeah. My 100%, the goal with me writing this book and the goal with me being a yoga therapist is that I want to help people to be their healthiest and their happiest. I like to say that I didn't get to be my healthiest and to my happiest until I was already getting my AARP senior discounts. And I don't want that to happen to other people. I wish that I had, been my healthiest and my happiest earlier on in life. But again, unfortunately, we prioritize things differently, and I did not prioritize my self-care.
Mhm.
But that's one of the reasons why I lead my first Love Yourself workshops. We absolutely must take time and prioritize ourselves.
Wow. So, as we get ready to get out of here, Deborah, I have two more questions for you. And you're a woman that has faced some childhood adversities, then you face some adversities in the corporate space, and then now you're someone that's totally successful with your business, with your book. And I know that our listeners have faced some of the issues that you've shared or spoken about, or is inquisitive about some of the things that you've discussed. Can you share with us key life lessons, some advice, some takeaways that you want to leave with our audience?
Sure. One of the things I want to mention right away is that word success and how we interpret the word success, because too often in our society, we interpret the word success with money in the bank.
All right.
And, again, if in terms of, I would assume that this was how you lived when you were, a boy in Jamaica. Being a success is being healthy and happy, having loved ones, having a sense of community,
Right.
being in sync with nature. Success really should not have anything to do with that monetary attribution. And the other thing that I talk about, in fact, in my book about success is people do not find that level of success. You're always trying for more, more, more. You always need more, more, more. Why? Because you spend more and more. The more you have, the more you spend. And it's not until you get to be a billionaire do you say, okay, I have enough. I personally, the way that I look at things is, if I have an extra, couple $100, I should do something worthwhile with it. And I don't mean buy myself a television. I don't own a television. But I think it's important to contribute to organizations that are helping in your community as well. And I always give of my time and of my money to organizations that I feel good about. And if I can contribute to them, then that is a meaning of success to me. So I don't know if I answered
No,
all
you
the
did.
questions.
You did. Thank you for that. So, as we get ready to get out of here, Deborah, I know you have a book. I know you have a business, and I know that you want to speak and talk to people in regards to like your profession and what you're doing. So I'm going to leave the floor to you. So if anyone wanted to work with you, anyone wanted to book you on a podcast, anyone wanted to get you for a book signing or something like that, how can they get a hold of you and work with you?
The easiest way is to go to my name, Deborah, Deborah, Charnes, CHARNES.com. That is my yoga therapy website. And if you go to the button that says book, or if you do / and book, you will go directly to my book site, and it will have more information about my book. It has a video. It has a lot of the endorsements for my book. And it also has a pull down where you can plug in for speaking engagements. I will say that I mentioned before that I'm going to be doing tours, book tours. I already have California and Utah on the agenda. I'm looking for more places to go to. And of course, even in California, Southern California, even in Southern California and in Utah, I'm always looking to fill my day. So I'm definitely open to yoga studios, to health clinics, to nonprofits, and of course to indie bookstores as well. And I also am doing a lot of workshops that are related to my book, and some of them will be offered virtually, and you can find those on my website as well.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for joining me and being here on my show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you and have this conversation. You enlightened me so much with some things that I knew but I didn't know. So with going through this and then hearing some of those interesting stories of some people that you've had contributed to your book, I thought was super, super fascinating. So thank you so much for coming on here and being with me and sharing your story.
It has been a true pleasure of mine to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, guys, we're getting ready to wrap up here. So, we're going to release this episode every week. Until next time, we love you guys. Peace.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, know it come and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.